Very quickly at the top of this video, I wanted to talk to anybody out there who's in the Philadelphia area tonight. Today is June 12th, 2019, and I'm playing a set at a place called 118 North in Wayne, PA. If you happen to be in the area, come on down. I start at 9 sharp, and I only play till 9:35. My first set is 9 to 9:35. And then after that, there's an open mic thing that goes on. And then at the end, I'm closing out the night with my improv trio, which is called Girth Control. You heard that right. It's called Girth Control. By far one of the funniest band names I've ever come up with, but we love it and we laugh every time we say it. And so that's the message I'm putting out here at the top of this video. Come down to 118 North tonight. It's Wednesday, June 12th. That's about it. Now, let's get right into the mix breakdown of this week's song. Happiness starts to unfurl.
Wish you safe travels as my life unravels and new things come into our world. I hope that you...
So let me just start this particular mix breakdown by a little bit of a story about this song, okay? So I started at 9 a.m. on this track, worked really hard, about till 1 p.m., had to deal with some landscaping that was going on here at my property. That took about an hour out of my day. Then I ate a little lunch. Then I came back to the studio and just sat here and cranked out the rest of the parts and the mix and all that stuff. Somewhere around 10:30 to 11 p.m., my ears went basically numb. No matter how much referencing I was doing against other songs, I couldn't get this mix to sound the way I want it to sound. In fact, once I crossed the midnight deadline and I realized, it's coming out late anyway, I literally sat here and actually played a different Hammond organ part. I added a couple of different vocal parts because I was like, it's coming out late anyway. So I was literally retracking certain stuff after midnight. The song didn't get released until around 4 a.m., but that just tells you, this is how seriously I take Monday music projects. So I'm really glad so many of you liked this song. The mix isn't perfect by any means. Working under those conditions is very difficult. If you are somebody that is sitting there mixing too long and you find oh no, I can't really hear the detail or I can't hear the low end or whatever, best advice there is to stop, right? You would just stop, walk away, and probably not listen to anything for a few hours at very least. I don't have that luxury on Music Monday. I have to release these things in one day. It's my own fault for starting this project. Any engineer with half a brain would give himself about a week on a song like this. It's a big, complicated mix. But anyway, that's it. It did come out. You guys really liked it, liked the mix, which I think is awesome. I will be remixing this before it hits iTunes and Spotify, just because there's a couple of things I really need to change. Anyway, let's get to the actual mix breakdown part of this now that I've talked way too much at the top. So here we are, 22 tracks. That's all, well, maybe that's not all, but that's 22 tracks. So it's actually a bigger project than most of the Music Monday songs. I think in the past, the max that I had was somewhere around 15 tracks. This is 22. So maybe now you understand why it was such a gigantic hassle for me to get right. But One Day Productions, it is what it is. So let's go down. We're going to start at the top. Now, when I wrote this song originally, this is literally what I did. It's been edited down. It was actually longer than whatever this is, 5 minutes and 20 seconds long. So those edit points are where I needed to chop little bits of this out. But this was basically in the morning. I just sat down with that black guitar that's sitting right there, the Eastwood Joey Leone, and this is it. Right? It's super basic. I had this idea that I wanted sort of a droning thing. Again, we're talking about tension and release. So when you use a drone note, in this case, it's D. Is it D? It is D. So in this case, the key is D. The nice thing about using droning notes is that the longer they drone and the longer you sing some sort of melody over that, you're just building tension, right? The moment where that drone goes away and you switch to a different note, different chord, whatever it may be, that's where the release happens. So this song is very tension and release heavy. So what I'm talking about is in this section right here, right? So let's get rid of that. right? So yeah, I literally just sat there with the guitar that morning and just sort of played the entire song from beginning to end, not having written any words, not having really written any arrangement or anything. I just figured, why don't I just play this for as long as I want to play it and try to just build parts as I play it. And I did, and that's basically what you ended up hearing is the full-blown version of this original guitar track. All the parts are in here. All the chorus and all the bridges. So this one is using the cool jazz combo because, you know, I'm using my cool jazz guitar over there. And lots of reverb on it. Nothing too exciting. I pretty much just use this straight tone right out of GarageBand. It's a cool sound to begin with. More reverb, probably most likely dialed out a lot of the low end. Got the 57 going on the amp because I wanted to make sure that this poked through. The strings are a little dead on that guitar, and this tone is not that bright. So I actually went around and tweaked this in a way where this particular tone was a little bit more bright than the stock one, but that's because I knew it was a single guitar part, and I didn't want it to disappear throughout the whole song. And again, using proper EQ can be just as powerful as a volume boost, right? So in this case, instead of boosting the volume, there's no automation or anything on this except the end. Instead of using automation volume boost, I made sure that there was tons of high end in it. That way it would poke out in like, not necessarily strategic moments, but it pokes out sort of kind of whenever it can inside the mix. It's something that I think is sort of interesting about this part, but it's the high end that did that. Okay. Let's see. This is the solo modern stack. Oh, I did some interesting new things on the bass here, which is a little loud in the mix, I will admit. Listen to this. Okay, so I'm using, which amp am I using? This was the modern stack, right? As always, I use that a lot. Modern stack, but I was using the Schweppes Omni channel. And in this case, I pretty much just turned it on, and I'm pretty sure I didn't do anything except perhaps adjust the input and output gains. You guys, this Schweppes Omni channel, did I say Schweppes earlier? The Schweppes Omni channel thing is so good. I want to show you why I'm saying that. I love this thing. So basically, let's hit play. And if I come down to one of these controls, one of the knobs on the interface here, and I hit my control button, it will isolate the frequency that I'm working on. You won't hear the whole bass part anymore. You'll just hear the frequency that I'm looking for or searching for, right? So in this case, we're at 126. I just sort of need to take a mental note of that. And it's soloed. Let's play it. Hit control. It is by far my favorite EQ feature that I've ever encountered as an engineer in the digital realm. Being able to do that, right? You just isolate the frequency that you're working on and you can search through it. It's so phenomenally useful, you guys. I can't believe that the Slate Digital guys haven't used this anywhere yet, but major thumbs up to the Schweppes Omnichannel engineers who came up with that idea. It is so useful. You can basically dial in, find the exact frequency that you want, and then this is, the frequency sweep, and then the control over here, this is the volume of that frequency. So it makes dialing in bass tones or guitar tones or whatever, like if you have a very specific thing that you either want to hear or get rid of, it makes it so much easier to locate those frequencies because you can isolate just that band that you're working in. Schweppes Omnichannel, totally go buy it. But otherwise, I pretty much just turned this thing on, set it to bass 1, and ran with it. I did come up with a few different bass tones over the day and over the night. I believe this was sort of like a last-ditch effort because I couldn't get the bass exactly the way I wanted it to be, but this tone ended up being pretty good. It might be a little loud in the mix. So things that you should be aware of in this are like here, where we get to the bridge part. I think that's here. right? So you could see that the volume is brought down here, right? And one of the reasons I did this is because I wanted to make sure that the chorus, especially the final double chorus, lifted a lot more than any of the sections transitioning before. So because it's a bridge, because it's sort of an atmospheric-y part, it does do that. And you can see that rise in volume right here. So we start at 1.6 dB and then it jumps up to 3.7. So it goes up, basically, let's call it 2 dB, which is a big increase in a bass signal. And I'll just let you hear just the end of this section. Let's start with the horns and stuff. Right? So those kinds of little shifts, especially in a bass tone where you sort of drop the bass down before a final chorus, really, really great way to help that last chorus poof and boom and pop out of the rest of the mix, right? The rest of the song. Little bit of volume automation there. That's all you need in something like that. Really, really powerful little trick. Again, coming down here to the Philharmonic 2. So I have a cello going, some strings, there's some horns, and there's some basses going this time around. You guys, this Philharmonic 2 thing, the Miroslav thing from ICO Multimedia, super, super great. Love this thing. The sounds are just awesome. And now here are the strings. Right? I really didn't. Oh, you know what? I did do a few different things here this time around. Went to the mixer here. You can add in the master output of this, you can add EQ and a compressor. In this case, I used the compressor. It has a spreader on it, which was sort of nice. And I was able to just sort of tweak this sound a little bit more, get a little bit more gain out of it by using this. But in general, I haven't found myself needing or wanting to EQ these too much, even though I could if I really wanted to. But I like them just the way they are. They're really nice stock sounds. They sound good. Same thing on all of the channels that have the Miroslav. There were compressors put on the master output. Strings, pretty basic. Just through the choruses, the cello and the strings part, the orchestra strings are just on the choruses. The horns and the upright bass, or the contrabass, as you do call it, are in the intro and a little bit in the second verse, which aren't loud enough, and a little bit in that bridge right before we go into that last double chorus. I love these things. It totally has that like Space Odyssey 2001 thing. Here they are by themselves. Oh, those sounds are just so freaking good. Here's the whole thing in the whole mix. Love it, love it, love it, love it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to come in here. I'm going to turn this bass down oh yeah, see, it's actually too loud. See, this is what happens when you work till 4 a.m, people. Things get a little funky. So 5.6. Let's just bring this down to a full dB. We'll just bring that one down 1 dB and live with that. So yeah, for these particular parts, like the horns and the low end, that contrabass sound, you got to be careful. Because yeah, they are sampled sounds. You don't want to use them too much. The horns, especially, as great as they are, they still do have a little bit of a synthetic nature to it, to my ear. So that's okay. You know, I doubt too many people would ever be able to tell that they were sampled. You know, if you're like a seasoned engineer with great ears, you'd be like, those are samples. But the average listener won't. But just kept them pretty sparing. You know, I didn't use them a lot of places. I really wanted this song to be arranged by the instruments. So, you know, because it is sort of droning, right? So what I mean by like arranging it by the instruments is like, this is the acoustic guitar track, right? So it's not in the intro at all, right? And not even sure. Yeah, this is just the first verse. Right, so the verse has already started there. The acoustic guitar doesn't open until the second part of the first verse, if that makes any sense. So it's just like drone, 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 droning with the vocals start to come in. And then as we get to that second section where the note starts to move, where the drone will end, where the tension will then be released, right? I add a new musical element. And in this case, it's the acoustic guitar. This was an idea that sort of came in the afternoon because I was like, what's missing? What's missing? I tried strings. I tried a piano sound. Wasn't exactly what I wanted. And then I just like picked up my acoustic guitar and I was like, oh yeah, just like that strumming sound. Perfect, right? That's what I wanted. So let me just let you hear that.
Must keep moving. This I know, but I won't have anyone like you. I won't have anyone like you to be just my friend and talk to the end. I'll keep going.
Right? So there the acoustic guitar drops out all the way again in a verse. I mean, I don't actually know if I've done this in any song that I've put out before, where I use the acoustic guitar specifically, in this case, acoustic guitar, strings, the horns, to arrange the song, right? I think it's just an interesting choice. It sort of came to me in the middle of the day. Something I thought you might be interested in knowing about this song is that, right? Now, another thing about using this acoustic guitar as a way to arrange this song, it was a nice way to help build into the choruses, right? And I've talked about this on my channel before, where you need to play the guitar, in a certain way, So in this particular case, I'm talking about entering a chorus, right? So here's what the guitar does when I enter that chorus. Let me zoom in. And you just so you can hear it. It's not exactly even left to right, but you will get it. I'm playing in a certain way to sort of signal to the listener, hey, we're going somewhere very soon, right? And let's listen. Do you hear what I'm saying there? So in the full mix, like it's not that loud, but you can totally hear those acoustic guitars come in. And I also do think it's interesting, even though the one on the left starts playing earlier, I don't really think anybody will notice that. It really sounds like those guitars happen at the same time. Here it is in the whole mix.
We'll always be here for you, no matter what time we do. I wish you safe travels is my life.
So do you hear what I'm saying there? The guitar was performed in a certain way to sort of signify, hey, going to a second section here. Little tiny things like that make the biggest difference in the performance of a guitar part. You really got to play in a certain way. You can't just go like section A, section B. If the song calls for it, that's what you should do, sure. But in a song like this, especially, and in most of the songs, I play the guitar or the bass in a certain way where I do that, where I sort of lead the listener to understand that a new section is coming up. It's just being a good musician, I think. So anyway, that's that. Nothing too fancy. Oh, virtual mixer here. I've started using this Blue Edition, this FG116 compressor a little bit more. I was totally using that the stressor, whatever it's called, the other compressor that like I use all the time. I'm trying to get away from using the same stuff every single time. This time I'm using this guy. This is soloed acoustic guitar here. That's the Recording King, the RAJ 126. That's what I was playing. I was using also, just so you do know, the red picks from Dunlop. These are the lightest ones I think they make. They're 50 millimeter. I can't read it. My eyes are gone. But it's a very, very light pick. If you don't know, I've made a really interesting video about switching picks, what you're playing live versus what you play in the studio. I actually go through every single gauge of Dunlop picks and record that so you can hear the actual difference. And in this particular song, I really wanted there to be a lot of pick noise. I wanted that slapping pick sound on the strings, just because I really needed this guitar part to be rhythmic, almost like a shaker. Okay, so that's what's going on here. I dialed in a bunch of high end into the guitar to make that happen. Turned this thing on, the Revival plugin, and have it shimmering up to 20 up there. I mean, that's a lot more than I normally use. Yeah, pretty, all things considered, decent. Not my favorite, but decent enough guitar tone. Pretty basic guitar tone. That is, of course, coming through the SM7B. The SM7B was the only microphone used on this entire song because I was running late and feeling lazy. Didn't feel like setting up any of my other microphones. I'm going to start doing that more often because I do wish this guitar sound was a little bit different. Okay, so we're going to keep going down here. Now let's look at we can talk about the piano. I skipped the piano. Basic piano part. As always, I'm using the Grand Rhapsody from Waves. I love this thing. All right, you hear it glitching because my computer's doing a ton of things right now. For screen recording, playing GarageBand, all these different things. So anyway, Grand Rhapsody, super great. Did dial a little bit more high end and a lot more low end into this. Reverb and compressed it. Things I haven't normally done with this plugin. I normally just let it sort of do its own thing, and it usually sounds pretty much right, exactly the way I want it to at the beginning. Grand Rhapsody thing, super great if you're looking for piano sound. So, okay, vocals, tons and tons of vocals. So again, in the terms of using instruments to arrange this song, used my voice, that instrument of mine, used the voice as another way to arrange this song, right? So if you listen to it, the first verse is like laden with harmonies, tons and tons of harmonies. Let me just let you hear all of these harmonies because they're not awful. This is what they sound like.
Soon the day comes, you will go, must keep moving. This I know, but
Okay, so clearly I should have edited those down a little bit. There's a cough in there. I didn't even know. You didn't even hear it, right? I doubt anybody heard that little off to the side. But let me isolate these a little bit more. I think the parts are interesting. So the lead vocal is this top one. So let me just get that going.
soon the day comes, you will go.
Okay. So that's the main lead vocal, and that is dialed at 12 o'clock. Now we come down here. This is one of the first harmonies.
Soon the day comes, you will go.
Okay. Another harmony dialed slightly over. It's +6 to the right. Here's some more harmonies, which I believe are the same as that other one.
Soon the day comes, you will go. Must keep moving.
Okay. So that's what that harmony is doing. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting about this next harmony, the highest one, is it doesn't move very much at all. And I'm going to get rid of the other harmony. So this is lead vocal and the third harmony you have not heard yet.
Soon the day comes, you will go. Must keep moving. This I know, but I won't have anyone like you.
Right? So it's a very standard backup vocal trick. There's one that's moving, another harmony that's moving basically with the lead vocal. If you have the opportunity to have one high note that hangs, it's yet another way to create tension in a vocal, right? So here they are all together again, and just so now you can hear it. So there's the lead, the second vocal, and that one harmony at the top that basically drones on that same high D, right? Another high D.
Soon the day comes.
Right? That I personally really like that. Let's get rid of the lead.
Soon the day comes.
Did you hear that? So it's not necessarily contrary motion, it's just one note holds and another note is falling while the melody is da 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 da, right? It's doing something a little bit more melodic. Just an interesting technique for when you're developing backup vocals, okay? So that first verse has tons of vocals in it. Second verse really just boils down to just this.
Life can hit you,
which is a doubled vocal.
You in strange ways. Keep your head up anyway.
Right? I didn't do a double vocal at the top. Only really did it in the second verse and out to the rest of the song, which is just another chorus, right? So, just another thing I did to work the arrangement on this song a little bit differently than I had in past. So, that's that. When the second verse comes in also, there are the horns and strings. They weren't loud enough in the mix. I don't know how many of you actually noticed that they were there, but they are there. Actually, it would have been, let's just turn these up because they should have been turned up. I was sort of sad that these got buried.
Strange ways. Keep your head up anyway. You are too strong to be knocked far down. You'll be held up by friends in this town. We'll always be here for you, no matter what time we'll do. I wish you safe travels is my
right. Just a nice way to sort of, because it's so bare, the bass drops out, right? So obviously another instrument change to help the arrangement become a little bit more bare bones in that second verse, right? So we climbed up at the top, right? We have those epic horns and strings that open the song into the drone, all sorts of chorus, all sorts of backup harmonies, all sorts of things going on. And then we get to the second verse, it all drops away, and it's just basically guitar, drums, voice, and the string sounds, and a little bit of that Hammond organ, which is just down here at the bottom. But they're just sort of holding big chords, not doing a ton.
ways. Keep your head.
Right? Right? A little bit churchy and just basic, keeping it super basic during these builds. Oh, something else I didn't talk about yet in the choruses. Well, have we talked about a real chorus yet? I don't think we have. In the choruses, you have a bunch of different vocals, right? So here are all the harmonies.
I wish you safe travels as my life unravels and new things come into our world. I hope that you find what you want from this time and that happy.
Okay. So there are those harmonies, and then I added some classic oohs.
I wish you safe travels as my life unravels and new things come into our world. I hope that you find what you want from this time and that happiness starts to unfurl. I know that you're searching and that you're still learning and trying to find a new way. And when your composure just starts to boil over, just come here to hear me that day.
Right? Yet another thing to help with the arrangement, new vocals. Like, I'm not singing the lyrics themselves. Clearly, I'm just going ooh. But just another thing that I used to sort of create this bed of sound. When you think about those oohs and then you combine them with like the string sections, it becomes a lot more interesting and orchestral, right? So here that is again.
I wish you safe travels as my life unravels and new things come into our world. I hope that you find what you want from this time and that happiness starts to unfurl.
Right? So I just thought it was an interesting thing to point out to you guys. Strings combined with those oohs, which in theory were supposed to work like another part of an orchestra or like a big chorus standing behind the orchestra, So that's sort of the basic concept there. On these vocals, on the oohs, as always, I put a ton of reverb on these things. And that reverb is coming straight from GarageBand, the master reverb output. And let's take a quick lookity-loo here at that. Let's get over to the reverb. So yeah, I did actually bring the color up. I'm usually bringing reverb colors down. I lengthened the time of it and I turned it up, a little bit past 12 o'clock. Just wanted to make sure I heard tons of this reverb because I love these master output reverbs. They're great. And with a little bit of tweaking when you need it, it's pretty much all you need. These reverbs are really good. I've talked about this a ton. You know how much I like these master output reverbs in GarageBand. They are very, very useful. Okay, so down here is the organ, right? And as per usual, I did automate this part quite a bit. So if we get to its guts, let's look at this. We can just sort of, if you watch the controls here as the track rolls, you should hopefully see some moving.
Cut right through me. I wish you safe travels as my life unravels and new things come into our world. I hope that you find what you want from this time and that happiness starts to work.
Right. And maybe it's a little buried in the mix, but it's because I didn't want to hear too much organ. The organ, especially, I wanted to hear more strings than organ. But the organ's there and you can hear it, but just so you hear it with these automation moves, just so you can understand. I've made a video about how to get your GarageBand Hammond organ parts to sound more authentic. It is this kind of stuff, using the automation tools to use the drawbars and to open and close those drawbars throughout a section. Using those higher upper harmonics out of a Hammond organ, great way to help something lift and maybe come down a little bit. As you go through these courses, that's what you would start noticing, is that there are certain areas where the drawbars start going back into the organ and those upper harmonics aren't there anymore, but they're definitely being heard, or the Hammond organ is still being heard for sure. Just using the automation tool. Check out that video about how to make a Hammond organ sound real or something like that. There's a way to play the Hammond organ, but using these particular automation tools really is like the icing on the cake when it comes to a good sounding Hammond organ part. It's just awesome. Now, I didn't do it with the volume, and I don't know why. I decided to just sort of do it with regular automation points here. Just sort of felt like I was getting more control out of it, at least the way I wanted it to be. So more swelling and dips in this last double chorus, because it's the Hammond organ. It shouldn't be just one constant volume. The volume should be moving because a Hammond organ has a pedal, a volume pedal, which good Hammond organ players are constantly manipulating. Now, in this particular case, obviously I'm using the MIDI one, and I don't have a volume pedal. So I have to do it this way, or I could do it with the fader on there and using the automation trick, which I have talked about. Anyway, so I think, let's see. So that pretty much covers it. The drums, nothing too interesting here. I do believe, oh yeah, well, I am running it through the virtual mixer. I wanted to beef up the kick drum a little bit. Oh, and I also needed to tame it because there were some gain structure issues here that I could have remixed it. Like I could have just sort of like, oh, I got to redo the whole thing. But once I sort of stumbled into this fact that the gain structure was a little bit off, it was getting pretty close to midnight. So I didn't really want to go back to ground zero for mixing this song. But anyway, a little bit of boost up here in the 1.4 kilohertz area. This is mostly doing cymbals and a little bit of the snare. And this one right here, which is around 424 hertz, is, doing kick and snare. And then down here, which is around 110, 105, this is all kick drum. Boosted a bunch because I wanted to make sure that you could really hear this kick drum. In this particular drum sound, I think it's the speakeasy one. The kick drum's great, but it's a little on the soft side. So if you need it to punch through, just turn up the low end. Super simple. But otherwise, I think that talks about, I think that's about it. Used the groove matcher. Did use the groove matcher for a guitar part, the solo. Oh, the solo. Let's talk about the solo. You guys were also kind about this solo. I want to show you. I'm using the Dublin delay effect. Here's the solo. Right? Really great sound. I doubt that I did very much to it in terms of adapting anything. Nope. Using the Ribbon 121. This all looks pretty standard to me as far as the Dublin delay thing goes. Obviously, this is like the edge, right? This is the U2 sound. It's a great one because it's rhythmic, so you can do these things. Great trick. Really great trick. In fact, I believe one of the very first YouTube videos I ever made when I still lived in Italy was on how to do this particular rhythmic trick with a delay. But in the whole mix, here's what it sounds like. Right, it's another tension builder before we get to that big double chorus at the outro. More tension, more release, more tension, more release. This song, it's a bit of a ballad. It's in 6, so it's got that waltzy feel to it. It's a song that I wrote for a friend of mine who's leaving soon, and I don't know. She likes to dance a lot, so I felt like putting it in 6 was probably the appropriate thing to do. But anyway, I think that about covers every little detail of it. If I missed something, feel free to ask me a question. But I think that's about it, you guys. So as always, I super appreciate the fact that you watch and like these mixed breakdowns. It is really fun to make them. Thank you so much to all the new patrons who came into Patreon last week when I talked about Patreon being the thing that's going to keep the mixed breakdown going, and that still goes. If you love these mixed breakdowns and you want them to continue, please find my Patreon page, because that is going to be the thing that keeps us going. But you guys who did, I think like 4 or 5 people signed up on Patreon last week, which was huge for me. So thank you. That's huge. And I really appreciate the support. Super glad you like the videos here. As always, share them for me. And, if you hit the thumbs up, that helps it get viewed. And I really believe in the Monday Music Project, both for you guys and for me. I think possibly something could happen here. So maybe you guys can help me make that happen. But for now, I'm totally happy just making these mixed breakdowns, writing songs for you guys to enjoy. I'm having so much fun doing it, and I have no plans on stopping. People ask all the time, when are you going to stop doing Music Monday? And I keep answering, when I run out of songs. Like, if there's just one day where like, oh, boy, that's not working. And then if it doesn't happen again like the next week, then I'll probably put the whole project to bed. But for now, I still have songs to write, got songs to grab from the universe and interpret and send out to you. So you guys are liking them, so I like that. And that's it. I gotta go. Have an awesome day. And if you are in the Philadelphia area, come tonight to 118 North in Wayne, PA at 9 p.m. I hope to see you there. All right, you guys, have a great day. Peace and love.
Travels as my life unravels and new things come into our